So I recently picked up the 737 from Microsoft Flight Sim by PMDG. I'll be honest, I was pretty impressed with it. It's very accurate in its modeling. I was helping a friend learn to fly it, and while helping him out, I was thinking, I might as well just put together a short video tutorial series. So I haven't really looked at what's already out there, but my goal is to kind of make a short, quick and dirty guide with a flight sim mindset. This is kind of how I approach DCS modules. I don't really need to learn a full-blown real-life procedure, especially because there's a lot of things that are done that, in my opinion, just aren't necessary in a video game. Like, why would I test a bunch of systems if I know that they're going to work every time, because it's a game? So that just reduces the amount that I need to learn, it reduces the amount I need to remember, it lets me be able to enjoy more modules at one time with less mental bandwidth, and it also accelerates how quickly I can get up into the air and start enjoying these digital versions of airplanes. This video will be just a basic overview of the different variants of the 7.3 and the difference between them that PMDG has, and then also going over the configurations within that in the PMDG setup menu and the FS actions menu of the FMC, kind of looking how you can customize your version of the 7.3 how you like. Next video will kind of go over the various panels and break down each switch and do a basic, very simple run of the system for each one. We'll do an overhead, main panel, and center pedestal. And then after that, we'll do a guide on pre-flight, FMC, or box loading and setup, and then startup, taxi, takeoff, landing, and approach. So that'll be my goal. Probably keep these videos on the shorter side if we can. PMDG offers the 600, 700, 800, and 900. So the question is what's the difference? Basically, to sum it up, the 7.3 history can be broken into basically 4 phases. You have the originals, the classics, the next generation, or NG, and the MAX. The PMDG has modeled the NG series of aircraft. The way back old original 7.3 100 and 200 were very short. When the classics came out, they made them a little longer. They had the 300 and the 400, which were medium and long lengths, and then the 500 was the original short length of the 200. When they came out with the NGs, which had another stage of modernization to them, they basically followed the same format. So the 700 is about 150 seats. It's like the kind of normal sized one. The 800 is stretched, similar to the 400. And then the 600, they made them out of order. The 600 is actually the same length as the 500, which was the same length as the 200. So, not to be confusing, but the 600 is real short, 700 is kind of normal, the 800 is long. And then at some point, they made the 800 even longer and made the 900. So the problem with the 900 is, even though they extended the volume of the cabin by about 15% or so, they didn't really make any structural changes to it. So despite the fact that it can carry more volume than an 800, it really can't carry that much more weight. So the 900 is kind of performance limited. It's extra long, so it's tail strike prone, it's pickier on crosswinds, and in the event where you have say an alternate airport where you're landing with more fuel than normal, you might be pushed up against your max landing weight more easily, because while you increase the payload of your zero fuel weight, you didn't really increase any of the limits, and then you throw some extra gas on top of that and things become tight really quick. So there's some price differences. The 600 and 900 are a little cheaper than the 800 and 700. I think that's because the 8 and 7 both come with cargo variants and the business jet versions, whereas the 6 and 9, I believe, are only the airliner versions. The 600 is the cheapest. As far as the cockpit goes, they're all 90% the same. There's one panel that's different between the 6 and 700 versus the 8 and 900. They basically, when they extended the cabin, they changed out the air circulation system to accommodate a longer space. But aside from that, they're almost the same. So it doesn't really matter which one you get. They kind of all fly similar. It's just the bigger you go, the longer and heavier the airplane is, and the 900 can be a little bit sluggish with its performance. So the cockpit kind of is broken into basically 5 sections. You have the aft overhead panel, the overhead panel, the glare shield and main panel, the throttle quadrant, and the center pedestal. So we'll go over those later. For now, we're going to focus on the PMDG setup and FS Actions menu. So let's do FS Actions first. So basically this menu is how we interact with the ground crew and gate agents and whatnot to try and bridge the gap, because like we're just in this plane, there's no real people out there to talk to in real life. There'd be a lot going on outside of us, so we can control it through here. You can control your fuel load, you can just type in whatever you want and just insta load the fuel. There are some presets here you can use. You can also see your current load, CG, and zero fuel rate, max takeoff, etc. displayed here. You can do the same thing for the payload. You can kind of see your breakdown of the people on board, the cargo that's loaded. CG zero fuel rate is here as well. This is very helpful for when you get to loading the actual FMC perf-init, where you have to pull some of this information. Normally we'd get this from like a final manifest or cargo load report or something. We don't have that, so again, we use kind of these pages to fill those gaps. Here you can control your doors, see which ones are open, and control opening and closing them. Here's your pushback control. You can assign a tug, set your pushback settings, how the style you want, remove your chocks, etc. Up here you have your ground services. Here you can control everything to do with the ramp. So we can call for stairs, we can call for power, air conditioning, we can call for fuel truck, maintenance truck, get water services done, call for our bag loaders and bag carts. We can set target cargo weights and have them actually load it for us. We can set our fuel, have it actually fuel it up at about the rate that it would take in real life. Switch between jet bridge and air stairs, call them in. This is just everything for the ramp control in here. Then you also have maintenance functions. You can call for hydraulic refills, oil refills, various replacements, tire, brakes, etc. So that's all in there. So effectively that's what this is. FS Actions is kind of how we bridge the gap to being by ourselves and try to simulate a larger system that's working around us. The PMDG setup menu, on the other hand, direct control of how the airplane's set up. So first off, you can save and load panel states. There are some default ones in here, and there's also some ones I've made, but you can save your own custom ones in here. And so if you load, like let's say we load the climb one, it'll preload every switch the position that was saved for that profile. So if I like how it is right now, I can just like go to state save, type in my name and save it, the name that I want. It could be, I don't know, like APU on or something. Save it there, and then in the future I can always load up that exact switch state. You can also set how the airplane starts up when you first load in by just going through, picking the configuration you want, that snapshot, and that's how it'll start up when you first load up the airplane. That's super helpful, especially if you can save you some time on setup. Alright, let's go to aircraft. This is where we can choose to set up for the airplane itself. Under failures, we can set up all kinds of failure stuff. You can get in here, you can choose exactly which failure you want. You can set it to occur at an amount of time or some other kind of trigger. You can just kind of try and surprise yourself with some form of actual failures to kind of shake it up a little bit. I haven't messed around too much with this, but it looks like it could be kind of fun. In the displays, you're mostly just playing around with how the information is presented. In real life, depending on which package was purchased or how it's set up, they're not all set. There's so many 7.3s out there, and everybody has it set up differently. So you can choose which bugs appear, which bugs don't appear. You can change your radar altimeter from being like a gauge versus a number. You can change how the flap settings show up on the airspeed tape. Change track up versus heading up. There's lots of stuff you can do in here. Pounds versus kilograms. I think somewhere near was quarts versus percent on oil. So it's just, mostly this is just symbology of the screens, and you can customize it. Then we have equipment. This is where we actually get into the configuration of the airplane. So first thing up here is the MCP. Let's look at that really quick. So the MCP is the master control panel. Is how we control the autopilot. This is the Collins, and this is the Honeywell. Now, the buttons are exactly the same, and the function is exactly the same. The only real difference is this is newer and this is older, and it's just the presentation. It's how it looks. Otherwise, they're the same. This one is after so if you don't have after takeoff is if you don't have a lateral mode selected, then when you hit 400 feet, the flight director is going to revert to something, and you can choose whether it reverts to wings level or heading select, basically. I don't know why you'd want glide slope capture before localizer capture, but if you want it, you can have it. Let's see what else is in here that's useful. This is where you can kind of control what the airplane will announce. So if this is on, then when you reach whatever these things are, the little Egypt's voice will call it out for you. So you see, I don't have 400, 300, 200, 100. Those are off for me, but I got 50, 40, 30, 20. So it just depends on, like, here you can just change what do you want it to enunciate, what do you not want it to enunciate. There is a package for dual batteries out there. I don't know why PMDG thinks that if you don't have the batteries, you can't be ETOPS, because you totally can be ETOPS without having 2 batteries, but I don't know. And then here, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you can customize your actual accel height stuff. So, like, if you want to change when the plane will automatically switch from takeoff thrust to climb thrust, that's the reduction altitude. That's the default. You can change it. If you want to change when it switches from your V2 takeoff safety climb speed to your actual program climb speed, you can change that here as well. Or your engine out accel height when you want it to switch from the first stage of your single engine climb versus the second stage. You can change it if you want to. Those are the defaults. It's an aux fuel system which replaces cargo space with extra fuel. Very helpful if you're trying to get across the Atlantic. And then here are our standby instruments. So we got a couple options. We have the glass with the steam heading, just the glass, or 3 analogs. The HGS is the HUD. If we turn that on, it gives us this HUD up here. So that's kind of cool, kind of neat. And then on the center pedestal, it also adds this panel to try and control. I haven't messed around too much with it, so I don't really know how to use it yet, but it's kind of neat if you want to mess around with it. Just a note, you don't actually need it for the auto land to function, but, you know, it's kind of cool. Here's that, this is a short field. Here's a short field landing package. This was optional from Boeing for the 700s and 800s. Basically, it increases the angle of the spoilers when they deploy. It speeds up how quickly the reversers deploy, and I think it made some flap changes. Kind of helps you stop in shorter distances. So if you want it, you can turn it on. Brake types, let's see, light bulb types. You got your cabin class layout. You got 2 class or single class. The air stairs are kind of, they're like built-in stairs into the airplane itself, so you can deploy stairs without having to call for a staircase from the ground crew. Cutoff switch style, you have old and new. Let's look at those really quick. These are the old ones, big old mechanical throw levers. The new ones are electrical switches. So again, functionally it's the same, it's mostly just the appearance. So you can choose to have a yoke checklist or not. Move this guy around to kind of mark where you are in the checklist. So the pressurization panel, old and new. This is such a subtle difference, it's kind of silly. So the new one is big, long, flat window. The old one is like an inset, smaller window. Function exactly the same, the difference is just the size. Window shades. So if you install the window shades, then you have built into the window frame these window shades that you can click and pop out. Also, you always have this guy, which slides up on this rail. You can slide him around. Wi-Fi antenna. So you have no Wi-Fi antenna, the 2KU band, and the KU band. Normally you'd have some switches right here. They're not modeled. Mostly it's just exterior. But then you have the nav radio panels. So you have the MMR and the Classic. This is the MMR. Gives you a little keypad. You can type in your frequency and slide it up. Very convenient for a mouse. And then the Classic got a split knob wheel, set your frequency, swap it over. That's the PMDG setup for aircraft. Now we have options. So under options, you have simulation, performance, and colors. Colors, you could just customize the colors. You don't like this blue, you could change the blue. I don't know why you would, but you can. Performance is to try and help the actual performance of your computer. These are the frames per second for the screens. So you have engine, the standby, the heads-up display. I have them set fairly low just because I'm on my laptop. They're higher on my desktop, but try and cut down the rendered frame rate to help out your PC. And then we have the other stuff like the terrain image resolution, as well as if it has an animated sweep or not. Simulation. So you can have the baro and mins automatically sync between seats. So you don't have to set it once. That's great. You can turn on service-based failures. So the more you fly it, the more likely stuff breaks. You can also have it remember engine oil usage, so you have to refill it if you fly it a bunch. IRS options. This is good. Basically, this is the inertial guidance stuff. You can have it instantly aligned, so as soon as you put the information in, it's aligned. You can have it take 30 seconds, or the realistic, which is like 7 or 8 minutes. Alright, so realistic AP engagement, AT manual override. I would have both these off. In the real airplane, if the thrust levers are moving, you can force them out of where they want to be. In auto thrust, you can force them out, and when you let go, it'll go back to where it wants to be. The problem with the peripheral is it doesn't actually move with the auto thrust, so if I push it, it'll just stay there. So anytime it detects your throttle moving, it'll just ignore the auto thrust and go with your peripheral, which kind of sucks if it's not the real thing, because now you just won't work until you get it lined back up with where it wants to be, which is kind of clunky. So I just have this off, just in general for the using peripherals. I think it's easier. Realistic AP engagement is that in the real airplane, if you have any control deflection on pitch or roll, the autopilot will not engage. So just for jittery sensors or bumping the joystick around or maybe a bad dead zone, I would just rather have it off. And, you know, okay, it's not as realistic, but it's easier to use, in my opinion, for a sim. And then AP disco on control input. Real airplane, if you overpower the autopilot, it turns off. Same reason as the other stuff, I have that disabled. And then your steering hardware. You can have it set rudder only if that's all you got, or you can split it tiller and rudder, which case your tiller will do the majority of the nose wheel authority. The rudder is just a small piece. Alrighty, those are the menus. So I will wrap this up, and then the next video will kind of do a panel overview of the overhead. Alright, thanks for watching, and catch you on the next one.